Bore da, good morning, and a very warm welcome to our Tech Fest for Social Good. Croeso cynnes iawn I chi i'r Tech Fest for Social Good. Bore da, good morning. Y drafodaeth y bore yma ydy'r digwyddiad cyntaf mewn wythnos gyfan o ddigwyddiadau yn ein wythnos arweinwyr digidol. Dwi'n gobeithio yn wir bod chi wedi mwynhau'r heilwen dros y penwythnos a'ch bod chi'n barod I fwynhau wythnos gyfan o drafodaethau difyr iawn. A very warm welcome to you this morning, and this panel discussion this morning is the first event in our Tech Fest for Social Good, which is part of the Digital Leaders Week 2021. I hope you all enjoyed the weekend of sunshine and that you're ready for a week of thought-provoking and interesting discussions. The Wales Co-operative Centre are delighted to be hosting another week-long virtual festival to celebrate and showcase the benefits of digital technology for social good. This free festival will bring together experts from across the public, private, third and social business sectors to share experience and knowledge and inspire others to explore the potential of digital technology to improve people's lives and the communities in which they live. If you are a social enterprise, a cooperative, a charity, a not-for-profit, a public sector body or community group that wants to explore tech for good and all that that entails, then you have certainly come to the right place. We invite you to take a look at all the events that we're running this week and to get involved and to be inspired. We are incredibly pleased that you've been able to join us this morning for our launch event, because ensuring that everyone who wants and needs access to the internet and digital technology in Wales has it is a matter of urgency, not only so that they can live life to the full, but that they can access essential services and ensure that we leave no one behind. We're particularly pleased to welcome many delegates from outside Wales, not only from other nations of the UK, but 50% of our delegates today are joining us from further afield, and some of the countries involved in today's event. We've got delegates joining us from Switzerland, Nigeria, and New Zealand. So for those of you joining us from New Zealand, thank you for staying up so late, and welcome to Wales. Croeso Gymru. I hope you enjoy this morning's event. I guess I don't really have many housekeeping announcements to make. We're not expecting a fire drill in our virtual conference hall. I can't provide refreshments. I'm afraid you're going to have to sort yourselves out, and I hope you already know where the toilets are. However, if you're having any difficulty with Remo, then please do get in touch with our colleague Gemma Murphy. You can contact her by using the direct messaging feature. But a quick fix for any technical problems with Remo is to just refresh your browser. So do try that first, and if that doesn't work, then try messaging Gemma Murphy. The event is being recorded today, so if you want to watch it back at any point, you will be able to do so. It does take a little bit of time for us to upload that, but we'll let you know when it's ready for you to watch back. One feature that you might find useful is the calendar feature, which is a little icon on the top right-hand side of your screen, which gives a full itinerary of this morning's event. Also on the top right-hand side of your screen, there's a chat function where you can send messages. There's a list of participants in today's events, and then there's a question and answer feature, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the second half of the event when I'll be opening the floor to questions. But if you have a burning question that pops into your mind during the panel discussion, then please feel free to pop it into that question and answer column. Feel free also to tweet about this morning's event. You can do so by using the hashtags Tech for Social Good, DIAW Week, and Digital Inclusion. And we will also be running a survey of your main takeaways from today's event. The link, I hope, will happily be magically appear in the chat column. And if you can't see it, do let us know. Felly, beth am I ddechrau drwy gyflwyno ein panel I chi heddiw yma sy'n disgwyl yn awyddus iawn I rannu I syniadau a'i harbenigedd hefo chi heddiw yma. So let's start by introducing our esteemed panel, who, as you know, are some of the Digital Inclusion Alliance for Wales's highest profile members. They all feel passionately about encouraging cross-sector collaboration to make digital exclusion a thing of the past. So I'll be inviting them up to the stage one by one. They will each give a short introduction before we move on to our panel discussion. So first up, I'm pleased to welcome to the stage Hamish Lang, who is the chair of the Digital Inclusion Alliance for Wales. Good morning, Hamish.
Good morning, Jennifer, and good morning to everyone. It's fantastic to be here. Thank you so much. So as you say, I'm Hamish Lang. I'm the chair of the Digital Inclusion Alliance. I'm very proud to be its chair. The Digital Inclusion Alliance is an umbrella group of organisations doing fantastic work across Wales to help make Wales a truly digitally included nation. And we're really ambitious that Wales could become an exemplar for digital inclusion. We think that we can do that. And the Alliance includes both private and public sector organisations, third sector organisations, big and small. So it's a fantastic gathering. My interest in digital inclusion, I'm a doctor by background, although these days I'm in the School of Management in Swansea University. And I became really aware that as particularly the health system was moving towards a kind of digital first approach, there was a real risk of leaving people behind. The people who might benefit most from digital technologies might find themselves unable to use them. And so I became really, and remain very passionate about how we support people who want to be online to get online. Tackling the four big challenges of the access. Have they got access to broadband and technology? Have they got the skills to use it? Can they afford to use it? Can they afford the gadgets, but can they also afford the data? And then do they have the will? Can they see the point? And we need to tackle all of those. And then as an alliance, we've identified 5 priority areas: embedding digital inclusion across all sectors, mainstreaming digital inclusion in health and social care, addressing data poverty, prioritising digital skills in the post-COVID period, and setting a minimum digital living standard and co-production with our citizens for digital inclusion. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to this morning.
Thank you, Hamish. And our second panellist is Helena Herklotz, who is the Older People's Commissioner for Wales.
Good morning. Thank you, Jennifer Bod. Good morning, everyone. And it's great to be part of this event today. So my name is Helena Herklotz. I'm the Older People's Commissioner for Wales. That means my role as an independent advocate for older people is to protect and promote the rights of all older people in Wales. And some of my priorities include tackling ageism and age discrimination and enabling everyone to age well. And digital inclusion is an increasingly important part of that. And particularly during this pandemic, we've seen, haven't we, how important it is to be online, to be able to communicate with others, to be able to get information and validate that information, to feel connected. And for some older people, the last year and a half, it's been the first time they've gone online. And actually, there's some fantastic examples that I'm sure we'll hear about later and discuss about how older people have been able to take part in things, whether it's keeping fit or being able to talk and see relatives across the world. But for many others, digital exclusion has exacerbated the difficulties in the isolation they felt as a result of the pandemic. And that's why I'm pleased to be a member of the Digital Inclusion Alliance. I'm pleased to be playing my part as the Older People's Commissioner in working to make Wales a digitally included nation. And some of the things that we need to do is really to get digital connectivity seen much more as a right now, something that all of us need as citizens so that we can play our full part and so that we're not left behind. So I'm really looking forward to the debate and the discussion that follows today.
Helena, thank you very much. Well, next up we have the BT Group Wales Director, Nick Speed. Welcome to the stage, Nick. Nick, we can't hear you. There we go, excellent.
Bore da, diolch yn fawr, Jennifer. I'm Nick Speed, I'm BT Group Director for Wales, and I'm really grateful to have the chance to join the discussion today. BT is proud to be one of the founder members of this alliance. At BT, it was a no-brainer for us to get involved in the alliance right from the start. Our purpose as a company is that we connect for good, And we see the value of coalitions like this one for sharing the experience gained from serving our customers as an enabler of the digital technologies that are becoming more and more important, as we've already heard, in our work and at home too. So we've joined similar organisations around the UK to promote digital inclusion, sharing our experience and also highlighting the various initiatives that we're getting involved in. From a personal perspective, my interest is making sure that we address some of the barriers that have already been mentioned here in Wales and are identified in the Alliance's agenda. And that when we get a chance to come up with a solution here in Wales, then of course we grab it. Despite all the impetus that COVID has given to getting more people active online, we know that there is more work to do. While the recent Lloyds Consumer Digital Index, of which BT is proud to be a partner, showed that 23% of respondents from Wales felt that their digital skills had improved during the pandemic, that was the lowest of any part of the UK. The same survey indicated Wales also had the highest number of respondents, a fifth, who recognised that they needed to improve their digital skills, which you can take to mean that we've got a receptive audience out there who are looking for us to reach them, ready to take the next step on their digital journey. So through the Alliance and through the agenda, it feels like we are bringing together interested parties from all sectors to cut through the digital divides. That's the real value of the Alliance. And when I look at the priorities that the Alliance has already identified, it's just clear that there's a lot of work to do. It feels like we've got the right ingredients to use tech for social good and to make Wales a digital exemplar by all of us that are around the table. And I look forward to hearing ideas about how we do that during the discussion today.
Nick, thank you very much. Well, this is, of course, a Wales Co-operative Centre event, so let's invite the Chief Executive, Derek Walker, to the stage next.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, everyone. Bore da. I'm Derek Walker. I'm Chief Executive of the Wales Co-operative Centre, and we're delighted to be hosting today's event. If you don't know the Wales Co-operative Centre, we're a development agency often involved in supporting social enterprises and cooperatives, but we do a lot more work besides, and a lot of the work we do is around tackling exclusion and supporting people with skills, particularly around basic digital skills. So we lead Welsh Government's Digital Communities Wales programme, which is a large-scale digital inclusion programme running right across Wales. I'm particularly proud that we run this programme because of the impact it's been having over a number of years to support people with basic digital skills and to support them to have better, more fulfilling lives. If you're not involved in the programme, we'd love to work with you, but the team of advisors and trainers within Digital Communities Wales can support your organisation with a number of things. So we help with digital inclusion assessments to understand what organisations are doing and what they could do more of. We also help to train staff to work with clients and the people that access their services. We're able to loan out kit as well to help organisations on their way and to start off projects working with people that they work with. And we coordinate the work too of this Digital Inclusion Alliance. So please do get in touch with us. Check out our website if you want to work with us on digital inclusion in Wales. At the centre, we're really passionate about things digital too. So increasingly, we're supporting third sector organisations and charities around how they use tech for good, for digital, for social good. So check out the rest of the week's events on the Tech Fest for Social Good. Thank you, Jennifer.
Derek, thank you. Okay, next up is Kath Fallon. She's the Head of Enterprise and Community Animation at Monmouthshire County Council. For those of you joining us from abroad, that is a county in the southeast of Wales on the border with England. Good morning to you, Kath.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, all. Yes, I'm Kath Fallon. So I'm Head of Enterprise and Community Animation for Monmouthshire County Council, as Jennifer quite rightly says, a border county really with colleagues in Wales, but also in England, in Herefordshire, Gloucestershire, and also sort of southwestern Bristol. I'm really lucky to be part of the Digital Inclusion Alliance as Vice Chair, particularly as it's a subject very close to my heart, but actually to our residents and our communities in Monmouthshire. Digital deprivation is a real issue for us, as it's an absolutely beautiful county. For those of you who know Monmouthshire, in terms of its topography, we are in the Wide Valley. It's absolutely beautiful. We also border the Brecon Beacons National Park. However, that topography, unfortunately, doesn't lend itself very well to actually the rollout of digital infrastructure, and therefore we are the most digitally deprived county in the Cardiff capital region, with digital deprivation rates of 12% in comparison to our neighbours who are at 3 and 4%. Therefore, with our ambition for digital first, we have a strategic imperative to provide the infrastructure and services to enable our community to get online, to ensure no one is left behind. In terms of my particular portfolio, I'm responsible for a varied range of services and have strategic oversight of several economic, social, digital and community initiatives, and the focus of my work specifically is on economic and community development. So in this particular context, responsibility for promote and encourage and roll out of digital infrastructure, as I've referred to ensure that our community are able to access our services online, regardless of the level of digital literacy, specifically in terms of our communities and our employment and skills offer, assisting those most digitally deprived and excluded. So very much looking forward to the discussion today with colleagues and for all those invited. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Kath. That's Kath Fallon from Monmouthshire County Council. Our next panellist is Sarah Selleck, who is the Assistant Director of Operations and Marketing at the Wales Council for Voluntary Action. Good morning, bore da to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Jennifer, and bore da pawb. Good morning, everyone. Absolutely delighted to be part of this panel session today and to be working with the Wales Co-op during Tech Fest Week. For those not familiar with Wales Council Voluntary Action, we're the national membership organisation for the third sector in Wales. Our purpose is to enable voluntary organisations to make a bigger difference together. WCVA, with our local partners, the county voluntary councils, we provide support at both a national, regional and local level to help voluntary organisations here in Wales through advice, learning, support, guidance, and also funding to support a range of activities, including those supporting digital inclusion. Our mission as an organisation is to be a catalyst for change, and we are excited and be pleased to be part of the Digital Inclusion Alliance to drive forward this important agenda. We've been a member of the Alliance since it started, and we share its commitment for digital inclusion. Adapting to digital is a cross-cutting priority for WCVA, and through the pandemic we've seen deep and permanent change happening, with many of the issues escalating at a pace that we couldn't have anticipated. So we are working very closely with local partners and national partners, both the Wales Co-op and our local county voluntary councils, to address some of those issues. And we have a range of initiatives currently live to support the voluntary sector to understand what those issues and challenges and what is needed going forward, but also to recognise that we do have individuals who want to learn more and support them in their efforts to do so. But thank you so much, and looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Diolch, Sarah, thank you. And last but not least, we have Dave Floyd, who is the Director at Parago. Welcome to the stage, Dave.
Mike, there you are, Mike. Thanks, Jennifer. Bore da, good morning. I'm Dave Floyd. I'm a director of Parago. We are a service design, change and communications agency based in Swansea. Predominantly, we work with the public and third sectors across Wales, helping them to understand and deliver better services with a particular focus on digital. We work with these organisations helping them to take a user-based approach to service delivery. We're very much committed to using our skills and our experience to help organisations deliver services that work for their users, rather than delivering services to their users. We're pleased to be members of the Alliance, and we've joined up last week, and as the newest members, it's something that we're really committed to, is something that's massively aligned to the goals that we have as an organisation, and particularly around the key tenets of what the Alliance is around, the co-production and taking that user-led approach to service delivery, as I said, is a huge part of what we're about, and we work with organisations to help them achieve those aims of delivering excellent services for their users.
Okay, Dave, thank you very much. So that is our panel. We're going to spend the next half an hour or so discussing what's already being done to improve digital inclusion here in Wales and what steps should be taken next as a matter of urgency. So Hamish, if I start with you, we're at the start of a week of digital leaders events where lots of exciting innovations will be discussed, but perhaps we can start with understanding why digital inclusion is so important and what you see as the priorities for Wales now.
Thanks, Jennifer. And yeah, I mean, it's self-evident, isn't it, that we now live in a digital world. And for many of us, that's great. It helps us do our work, particularly in the last 18 months. It helps with social interaction. It helps with the delivery of health and social care. And it helps us live fulfilling lives, which is great if you're digitally included. But if you're not, that's a very unsatisfactory situation. And we know that in Wales, as elsewhere across the UK, there are quite a large number of people who, for one reason or another, are not online and are not able to share in the benefits of a digital world. And of course, that's been accelerated by COVID, although it's not new, it was there before. And I mentioned in my introduction that I'm a doctor by training, and we know that the people who are most likely to be digitally excluded are people with long-term health conditions, people with disability, older people, and people from disadvantaged communities. And they are also the people who are most likely to use health and care services. And so we have a real risk of creating a digital inverse care law. The people who would most likely benefit are the people who find it hardest to use it. So digital inclusion has become one of the wider determinants of people's health and well-being, along with employment and housing and all the other things we're familiar with. So the Digital Inclusion Alliance for Wales brings together organisations interested in fixing that, and we are ambitious that Wales could really lead the way on this. And we published an agenda at the beginning of the year. It's called From Inclusion to Resilience. I think that the link has been put in the chat. And we set out, I mean, there are many priorities, but we set out 5 big priority areas. We really do need every sector to be embedding digital inclusion. It's not acceptable for example, the health service just to assume somebody else will fix digital inclusion. It must play its part. We have to mainstream digital inclusion in health and social care, particularly because it's such an important part of people's lives and they are adopting a digital first approach. We must address data poverty. We've heard lots of challenges around that. And we have to prioritize giving people the skills to use digital if they want to. And we like very much this idea of setting a new minimum digital living standard and embracing the principles of co-production, working with citizens and users to really design digital services that work for them. So I think those are our priorities, Jennifer, and I'm really looking forward to hearing some of the examples of what's going on across Wales during today's meeting.
Excellent. Well, the first priority you mentioned there, Hamish, was for digital inclusion to be embedded across all sectors. Helena Herklotz, if I come to you, it's going to take a concerted effort, isn't it? Why is it important for all sectors to work together? And where is there already good progress being made and embedding digital inclusion across sectors?
Thanks, Jennifer. Well, there is good progress, and I'll touch on that in a moment. It's vital that it's across all sectors, because our lives are not just lived in one sector or in one place. And digital, we connect with digital in a range of different ways. At the beginning of the pandemic, 41% of people over the age of 75 were not online. So this gives you an indication really of the scale of progress and change that we need to make. And we need to think about all those places that we engage with public services, with the private sector, where we need to use digital. So Hamish has mentioned the importance of the health service, but we've got local authorities as well, the importance of social care, but also the ability just to go out and about and enjoy life. So to give you one example of where this isn't going so well, one of the, some older people approached me recently. They've just started going out and about again as lockdown eases. They have a favourite cafe that they go to. They've been going there for years. But that cafe now insists that they use an app in order to register to go in and to have a coffee there. And they're now not able to go to that cafe that they've been going to for many, many years. There are two issues there. One issue is that actually the cafe should enable them to sign in other ways. But it shows how important that ability to be able to not just be online, that's only part of it. It's about being confident online as well. So there's some great examples. So just to give you two, over in the west of Wales, in Pembrokeshire, they've got a really good partnership approach where the voluntary sector, the local authority, the health board are working together and offering community groups a community digital pack, so supporting community groups to help people get online. So really nice examples of a community approach. And we've also seen the importance of really focusing on places where particularly people are experiencing isolation or difficulty. And one example is care homes. We know all too well how difficult it has been for people living and working in care homes, people who've had relatives in care homes. So the work that's been done to get iPads into care homes to enable to have some contact, often with the people that matter most in their lives, has been incredibly important. So I think we need to harness the really good innovation that we've seen, look at how we can work better together, but also make it very clear that our public services in particular have a responsibility, not just to decide to put their services online, but to look at how they can then make sure that the people that can access those services online. And if not, they will have to continue to find ways to provide services in other ways as well.
And Helena, Hamish did mention in his introduction about the barriers that people face to digital inclusion. From your experience, what would you say is the main barrier for older people? And I appreciate we're talking about a huge age range here and different issues for different age groups, but what are the main barriers for older people?
That's right. So we are talking a big age range, but for some older people, it's affordability, so it's cost. So we know that about 20% of older people in Wales are living in relative poverty. So the cost issue is a key one there. And that's why we're very much supportive of the Digital Inclusion Alliance proposals in this area. The other issue is having someone to help you onto it. So if you've not grown up in an online world, and I didn't grow up in an online world, quite alien, it can still feel quite difficult. The language, the approach can feel quite scary almost sometimes. So having someone that can support you to get online. So for example, there are great projects of digital companions, one-to-one support. Sometimes that's by a younger person, but not always. Older people are also in those volunteering roles. The other area though is about making sure that people have the right equipment, people can have the digital connectivity, and also that there is ongoing support, because technology changes all the time. So sometimes I hear people debate this and you get a sense that, oh, well, once everyone's online, it's all going to be okay. Well, actually, that's not the case. You need ongoing support. Sometimes as technology changes, you need. And also the other area is there is still, and I think legitimately, there is some fear about online scams. We know that those often target older people. So there's also that issue about security, support for identifying where scams or frauds might be taking place. So there's a range of barriers. And I think one of the best ways of really dealing with that is that one-to-one support to enable you to get online, sorting the issue of affordability, and that will help groups across the population, and making sure that there are responsibilities on public bodies online as well.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to data poverty more generally in a little bit. But Dave Floyd from Parago, I just wanted to bring you in on that point of embedding digital inclusion across all sectors in Wales, particularly as you spoke earlier about services for users rather than delivering services to users. So what would you say to that?
Yeah, I think that's vitally important. I think to echo the stuff that Helena's already said, there's a lot going on in Wales. There's still a lot more to do. I think things like the digital strategy for Wales and the Centre for Digital Public Services, and in particular the digital service standard for Wales now, that is specifically for public sector delivery. But actually, I think there's a lot in there that other sectors and other areas in Wales can take from that, particularly those that are providing sort of public-facing services, where actually a fundamental part of digital inclusion and that service delivery is taking a user-based approach to services, and it's really good to start seeing it's not just the responsibility of the Senedd and Welsh Government, it's the responsibility of the local authorities and the health boards to start engaging with users and to understand what the users are trying to do, how they're trying to do it, and to start to build those services in a way that work not just for the organisations, where traditionally organisations have defined and delivered services for their own efficiencies and for their own sort of silo approach. People don't work in silos. When people are accessing services, they will go across multiple organisations, and taking that user-based approach to service delivery and starting to join things up across organisations and across sectors, I think will really start to give us a solid understanding of what the problems are, so that we can start to design services that actually work for the people that are looking to use them.
And can you give us an example where you've researched into user experience, a real lived experience of technology, and how that's developed and how that's enabled a company or an organisation to change the way they work?
I think, yeah, it's great to see there's a lot of local authorities now starting to take a user-based approach to service delivery. So actually they're starting to look at the services and like, again, I come back to, I can't keep coming back to what Helena said. Lots of organisations, particularly in the public sector, will say, well, we're online now, we're digital. But what they've done is taken old processes and put them online. They don't really work for the way in which people want to use them. They can be confusing to use. I think particularly when you start looking at digital inclusion, a big issue there is that confidence issue. And services online, they need to be intuitive. Modern web services are intuitive. It's why people don't have issues with things like Amazon, because you click stuff, it goes in your basket, you click to pay, everything is 1-2 click. And they are services that are designed and built with users in mind. I think we've got work being done within the Centre for Digital Public Services. They're doing some great work with a few local authorities there, looking at front door services for adult social care, working with the service users, both from a citizen level, looking across the social care sector, looking within the local authorities. They're working with the teams that deliver those services, and working with not only the teams that deliver those services, but also the people that access those services to really improve what that service looks like, and to make it a channel and a service that people that need it will seek to use. And I think a key part of that, and I think Hamish has mentioned, and I think he'll talk a bit more about the five areas within the inclusion to resilience report, but that kind of co-design and building those efficiencies through service delivery what that will actually, what we want to see happen there is those efficiencies then get kind of pushed back into helping support those people who are digitally excluded to remove them from that exclusion and actually build that digital inclusion and support people to access services digitally.
Okay, Dave, thank you. I want to move on to data poverty. Helena's already mentioned it. Nick Speed from BT. We've heard lots of distressing stories throughout the pandemic of people having to choose between, feeding the family or getting online, the dinner or data dilemma. What is being done at BT? What initiatives do you have that could help address digital inclusion?
Thanks, Jennifer. I'll talk about a couple of things here. I'll talk about what we've done during the pandemic, and then what we're doing to build on the lessons that we've learned from the pandemic to tackle the barrier of cost, which is very real for people. I mean, our own research shows that a third of people felt more financially vulnerable since the start of the pandemic, and there's ongoing uncertainty for a lot of us. So if I start first by what we've done during the pandemic, well, at BT, we changed our charges. We introduced some free services to support those. We lifted caps on home broadband plans so that every customer now has unlimited. To continue with that approach. And then we've capped charges at £5 for our landline only customers. In response to the challenge of lengthy school closures, which was a real problem for lots of people when they were juggling with people needing to work at home, but also children needing to learn at home as well, and pressures on broadband there. So we launched our learning program to support tens of thousands of families with free mobile data, free access to Wi-Fi, and 0 rating for key educational sites, including your own resource on the BBC. Looking to longer term solutions, we've announced that we're going to be launching Home Essentials at the end of this month. An industry leading at cost social tariff, with average download speed of 36 megabits per second, and 7 calls for £50. That will save customers £250 a year compared to equivalent. It will be available for everyone on any universal credit and legacy benefit social tariff, which saving estimate that the benefit it's half the price of our standard package. And of course, there may be worried about the costs. Old as they can't pay for some families £15 a month, which doesn't mean us.
Oh, I think we might have just lost Nick, but I think we all get the idea of all the initiatives that they've implemented there at BT. There's clearly a lot of work being done there with different data sharing and low-cost offers that's going on. I hope that we can get Nick back at some point, that we'll be able to hear him. Sarah Selleck from WCBA, maybe I'll come to you on this point of addressing data poverty. I mean, how much of a problem is it in Wales from your experience? I'm afraid we can't hear you, Sarah. Just need to, I think, need to unmute.
Apologies, Jennifer. Hopefully you can hear me now.
Brilliant. Okay. I'm doing that all the time.
Okay. From WCA's point of view, we really welcome the report that was published earlier this year. I think it was Nesta and the lab put a report together looking at this issue and understanding what the picture was in Scotland and Wales. And it's a great first step, I think, to understand what issues there are in Wales around data poverty. But I think that research really needs to go a step further, just to understand specifically who and where are the individuals who are experiencing these problems and how can they be best supported, to get out of that sort of position. But I think for us as a sector, I think what data poverty really highlights is the inequalities that exist across a number of different areas. particularly impeding those individuals around life chances, whether it be accessing education, training, employment, or even volunteering. You know, we've seen a huge uplift in the number of people who volunteered during the pandemic, but admittedly our own service for the most part is delivered online, but we do have centres across Wales where people can actually talk to somebody about those opportunities. So I think for us is to understand what more can be done, but what is then needed to support those individuals to improve their position when it comes to accessing services online. Because I think the initiatives that BT have spoken about and Nick are really welcomed. It'd be great to see other service providers going down the same route as well. But the connection and the cost is only a part of the sort of issue to be addressed about, you know, those people are lacking in confidence, they're lacking in those skills to actually get them to use those services. And I think that's where, you know, initiatives like Digital Communities Wales and various voluntary groups across the sector can help, you know, handhold those individuals, so to speak, to give them that sort of extra helping hand to make sure that they have, you know, access to the service and they understand what those online services are about. Because experience has told us over recent months, it's a complete myriad, I think, you know, a maze almost, I think, for lots of individuals to try and get to grips with all the various services. So, and that will take time, I think. Thank you.
So you raised some interesting points there about data poverty, but also that skills shortage. You might talk a little bit more about that. Derek Walker, you mentioned tackling skills shortages in your introduction. If Wales is to lead the way in digital inclusion, it's going to have to overcome that huge problem, isn't it, that skills shortage. Can you give some examples of what's being done and how you at the Wales Co-operative Centre are working towards that?
Yes, thanks, Jennifer. What we've seen in Wales is Wales was actually a good way behind many of the nations and regions of the UK in terms of digital inclusion. And because of the joined up approach and investment, I think, through from Welsh Government for Digital Communities Wales, we've still got a long way to go, but we are now holding our own in terms of the position of digital inclusion. That's not to be complacent, there's plenty to do, but that concerted approach with organisations working together is starting to show results, or has been showing results. I think what has been one of the, I guess, unsurprising and positive sides of this awful pandemic has been that people are now focused on digital skills and digital inclusion. So whereas previously we might have been knocking on doors, particularly perhaps in parts of the public sector, to say, you know, we want to work with you on digital skills, and not always had a positive response to that. Well, now that's changed. Everyone recognises the importance of digital skills and wants to do something about it. So that's very positive. We work with lots of organisations to do good things, and I think one of the successes of the way we've been working is not to do, but to work alongside. So this is a part of the mainstreaming approach. So organisations are responsible for ensuring services are accessible by their clients. It's not our job to do that, but we can advise them on doing that, and then that becomes part of their everyday business. It's not an add-on. Previously, in previous iterations of our work, it was much more direct delivery that we do, but now it's supporting and enabling organisations who will then hopefully go on to continue to do this work, and that is what we're starting to see. Helena mentioned one of the examples that I was going to mention, actually, about you know, what positively happened during the pandemic. Care homes were cut off, weren't they? And people within those care homes weren't able to see friends and families. They weren't even able to see their GP. And there was a huge initiative to get iPads and tablet computers to, I think, over 500 care homes across Wales with data and tablet computers, so that residents in those care homes could then speak to family and friends and access GP services. So that was a phenomenal effort by the social care sector to make that happen, and made a massive difference to the lives of many people. We're also been working with lots of organisations in the third sector, and many of the initiatives that they are undertaking are around befriending, tackling isolation and loneliness, and trying to do that, or doing that successfully online, through online means. So people as volunteers, supporting people to use, perhaps often older people, but not always, to use tablet computers, and then to be able to connect with family and friends, or with a befriender who is speaking to them on a regular basis. And that it's you know, it perhaps doesn't get the publicity it deserves, that type of a project, because it can make a massive difference to people's lives. It can be relatively simple to set up, but can, as I say, make a big difference. So we've been really pleased to see all of this activity taking place, and let's hope that momentum continues.
Thank you, Derek. I think we'll move on then to social care and health, which, you know, as well as other public services, are such an integral part of people's lives. And digital first, as Hamish mentioned earlier, has become accelerated during the pandemic and is now the default. Are there any particular challenges, Kath Fallon, I'll come to you on this one. Are there any particular challenges in this area? And what is being done in Monmouthshire, for example, to help people access health and social care services?
Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, I mean, biggest challenge in public service delivery of the time of the pandemic has been accessibility, and I'll provide some examples of how we as a local authority are addressing the issue and my response, if that's okay. Firstly, in terms of our response to the pandemic itself, we are in a fortunate position as an organisation in that we've been working agilely for a number of years. So through the work of our Excellent Digital Programme Office and also our team-based digital champions, all staff that needed laptops already had them, and therefore we're able to use, you know, we're also used to working from home, so, you know, responded sort of fairly quickly. We also had already started to work on Teams following a couple of flooding incidents prior to COVID, so we were able to pivot services quickly. However, we were conscious that our community needed to catch up with us. So in my particular area of community animation, Team software enabled us to break down any internal silos and jump to delivery quickly. So for example, our community development team quickly realised that they needed to work more closely with our social services colleagues to provide triage for our most challenged residents needing support, particularly those who were self-isolating. So we needed to ensure that they were offered the right service on the first call. We have also been able to mobilise our community neighbourhood support networks, which enables us to get help to where it was most needed on the ground. And many of these community groups have grown from strength to strength, and the network and partners are growing. So therefore, as we move forward and we build upon our digital first ambitions, we really want it to be based on what we've learned, and we know that co-production will be key to its success. So our Monmouthshire Digital Inclusion Action Group, for example, which is established in 2020, is actually chaired by Miranda Thompson from Gwent Association of Voluntary Organisations. Obviously, we recognise that digital inclusion is an even greater priority for us, as we've been discussing this morning, as we move forward. And we've got 15 organisations working together to support people to get online and use technology in the county. They've got two priorities. One is to share information about initiatives and to be able to promote them to reach more people who could benefit, but also to establish a digital lending library. So, for example, our community education has Chromebooks, MiFi units to enable people to get data, and also USB sticks, which we can lend out to learners when needed and enable people to access online courses. People First, a sort of a learning disabilities self-advocacy group, and have iPads and headphones and easy read guides to enable members to get online. One aspect of this service has been to help reduce anxiety about travelling and meeting up during the pandemic. Also, Mellon Homes, registered social landlord, has equipment to loan to residents and sheltered scheme managers. They've been able to help people who have medical appointments and get therapies online. So really, our digital lending library enables people also to have a go to gain those skills and that confidence before purchasing their own device, and they can access those through our community and library hugs. but also funding has been secured to focus on people living with dementia and for their carers. We hope to develop that service to be inclusive for all as we go forward. But it's very much about working with communities. So we recognise the need for volunteer digital champions to help us in the development, promotion, engagement in the lending library, and also to recruit some digital buddies to enable us to engage and assist people on a one-to-one sort of small group basis. And we're working with our sort of Bridges Volunteer for Wellbeing Service, and also providing additional training through the Digital Communities Wales to enable us to actually provide that loan devices into people's homes, hopefully, as we move forward. Also, embedding digital across all sectors is really important as we move out of the pandemic to make sure that we can assist those who need the help most. So our Communities for Work Plus in Monmouthshire project was the lead project in South Wales looking at laptop loan schemes. We've been able to provide, say, these mini MiFi boxes to enable that, which runs like a mobile phone, basically enables people to insert SIM cards so they can get hotspots and get that coverage. But also when we start down that route, we then realised that clients, some of those didn't have a valid Gmail account, so we needed to train our mentors to enable to set these up. That then involved a legally binding agreements between the client and the mentor, and to protect everyone on the device itself. But it's been really successful for clients in terms of how they've updated the Universal Credit Portal, vital in proving to DWP that they're actually seeking employment, having contact with their job coach. They've been able to access various online courses, and mentors have also been able to meet with clients on Teams or Zoom to share latest vacancies. And actually it's wider than that. They've been able to use the devices to communicate with family and friends and reduce that digital isolation we're all aware of, and provided that sort of vital communication really, and actually importantly enabled people to shop online, etc., for essential groceries. But as a local authority, digital inclusion of service users and staff is a core element of our public sector digital transformation projects. We're very conscious we have a high proportion of older residents, so we need to ensure that they're not digitally excluded and that they will benefit from the investment in digital solutions, but also important to ensure that there's no reduction in face-to-face services as a result of the expansion of digital and data, and to ensure that they're supported with digital skills and tools to enable them to access care and health services. We also use data analytics. It's key for us to enable us to free up staff to make the human decisions that machines can't, and to target the support where it's most needed. For example, looking at digital process to reduce incidents of fraud and error, helping to avoid duplication and loss of resources, looking at digital teaching and learning to supplement the traditional face-to-face learning, and then looking at how our digital systems can be developed to enable people to work and live within their community, as I talked about, particularly in terms of local employment opportunities, ensuring people can stay connected. But as we are the largest employer in the county, it's essential that we continue to digitally enable our workforce to go into the community to raise skills and awareness with family, friends and neighbours. So it's that careful digital design of our service that's really important, so that it's simple to access and for people to use. And then in the end, hopefully, it would be that they wouldn't want to do it any other way. But we realise we've got steps to follow to do that. It's essential that all our departments consider how they promote their services, enable people to access them as simply as possible without people having to travel long distances, or access them between certain hours of 9 till 5. So all of our services need to consider those customer needs rather than our own administrative convenience, really. So it's very much about raising our digital maturity through a structured training programme for our workforce, which therefore is critical to reduce our digital exclusion in the community, and to consider the digital maturity of our communities when we look to redesign our systems and processes, to ensure that we're working with other organisations, particularly the third sector, to reduce the impact of digital exclusion, but importantly also with our schools, to ensure that we deliver excellent digital knowledge and equipment and target all those children and young people, particularly those who may be digitally disadvantaged. But importantly, that we're also safeguarding people. We're very mindful of online safety with digital solutions, so we need to ensure we've got that safe storage of accurate data and information in order to ensure that we can also protect the vulnerable people in our communities. Thank you.
Okay, Kath, thank you. Some really interesting points there. We are running out of time on our discussion, but Hamish, would you like to come in on health and social care and how perhaps digital approaches can help close the health inequality gap that we have?
Yeah, thanks. And just very briefly to add to that, the truth is that the health service has not really done very much in the digital public-facing space until recently. I mean, we did have, in fairness, we had free Wi-Fi in hospitals in Wales a while ago, and that made a huge difference for people who were inpatients. But we're now seeing the rollout of video consultation, the sharing of records and information electronically with patients, and in fact the websites. I was pleased to be part of a program that just replaced all the websites in Wales to make them accessible for the first time. And we know that actually, you know, there are things you can do, and we're delighted that the Minister for Health and Social Services in the last government invested in Digital Communities Wales to see the importance for health and social care. We have to help the people who are most likely to be excluded to get online if they want to, because they will get left behind, and they are the same people who've been left behind by conventional health services. So there is stuff you can do. The widening participation programme in England showed that the health service in England, working alongside experts, such as the sort of experts we have here in Wales, can help people get online, and that improves their health-seeking behaviour. They're less likely to go to see the GP, they're less likely to go to hospital, they're more likely to get their advice online. So we can do it, but we need to link up the NHS with experts in the field. And just one final point, the NHS invests huge amounts in digital. And every business case that goes into Welsh Government should include something about how they're going to help people use them. And if not, it should be sent back, in my view.
Absolutely. I'm just going to ask one more quick question to Sarah Selleck. The Alliance has called for a minimum digital living standard in Wales and co-production with citizens. What does that mean in practice? And can you give us examples of that co-production in your experience?
Well, I think from memory, the digital living standard proposed in the report is very much something that needs to be developed further into what that looks like. I think what is interesting from a timing point of view is whether there's any scope to link that work into the universal basic income pilot that Mark Drakeford is looking to focus on, I think, through the Social Justice Department, particularly through Jane Hutt. So it'd be good if that conversation could take place, I think, between the Alliance and those leading on that piece of work, just to see if there is scope to include that digital minimum living standard in that conversation too. From a co-production point of view, it's an area that the voluntary sector has embraced and has pushed to the forefront for a long, long time. It has a strong focus within the health and social care context in terms of including patients and those users who access the services to actually be considered on an equal and fair footing with those people who are designing the services. And that's so important that that power balance is addressed. It needs to be equal in that space. I think what is important, co-production is an approach, but as long as we're listening and asking questions of those people who have lived experience of digital inclusion are helping us to shape those services. And I know Kath in her previous response picked up on that. For us, that's the most important. But I think just as a final point quickly, is just to ensure when people are having those conversations with those individuals that they know how to conduct that conversation in the most effective way, because it is a skill, I believe, in terms of, you know, eliciting the right response and making sure their voices are heard. So I would strongly recommend they sort of look to access and support and help in that space too. Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, thank you. And reflecting what Dave was saying earlier on about that user lived experience of using services. Well, diolch yn fawr iawn I chi i'r panel. Thank you to our panel. I just need to apologise for any confusion on captioning being available for today's event. If you'd like to use live captioning, please see the instructions in the general chat. You can use that now as we go forward to our question and answer section. So on the top right hand side of your screens, you'll see the Q&A icon. If you click on that, you can post a question for our panelists. If you don't mind, you can add your name and your organisation so that we know who you are. And if the question is for a particular panellist, then do let us know. Otherwise, I will ask the panel if they would like to answer any particular question. You can ask questions in English or in Welsh. Dwi'n fwy na bodlon cyfieithu unrhyw gwestiynau o'r Gymraeg. Os dwi'n fwy naturiol I chi postio'ch cwestiwn yn Gymraeg, mae hynna yn ffain efo fi. Mae'n neud yn ngorau gyfieithu yn fanwl I chi. You'll see a little up arrow icon next to the questions. If you click on that, effectively voting for that question, and the more popular questions will travel up the column and are more likely to be asked. So we'll spend the next half hour or so putting your questions to our panel. And the question that's at the top of the column at the minute is, does the panel know of any successful projects in Wales to provide free public Wi-Fi to individuals' homes, please? I'm afraid we've lost Nick Speed, who spoke earlier about reducing tariffs. Does any of the panel know about any projects in Wales about free public Wi-Fi? Is anybody wanting to answer that question? Or Hamish, if I can come to you, is there anything that the Welsh Government can do to facilitate providing free public Wi-Fi to people? I mean, what can the Welsh Government's role be in this? Yeah, so I think government has a really important part to play in the whole digital inclusion agenda, but it isn't all that to them, and actually we all need to pull together to do this, and if we do, we can crack digital inclusion in Wales. As I said in my earlier answer, the Welsh Government did require the health boards to put free public Wi-Fi into their buildings, and I know that made a huge difference for patients and family members being able to keep in touch with their friends and family in hospital, and frankly for patients to keep themselves entertained in the long gaps when things aren't happening. So there is that, and there is a lot of discussion about a kind of minimum standard for accessibility for new housing, which isn't quite the same as offering free public Wi-Fi to individuals' homes. So I think that we do need to, and there's this £15 a month from BT is fantastic, but it's still a lot of money for some people. And finding a program, we've had conversations in the past about being able to have broadband on prescription, perhaps as a social prescribing activity. There are challenges around who you identify, who gets it, but actually from a health service point of view, if in return for giving people good broadband, in return they engaged with the health service digitally and they were supported to do so, that's a kind of win-win, because of course they can use it for everything, not just for health. So I think those sort of schemes need exploring, and I think it would be great for government to get involved in that, and I'd be interested to know what other panelists think as well. Kath?
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm not aware of sort of free public Wi-Fi to people's homes. So the way that we did it was through the mini MiFi boxes, which we loaned out, so which run like a mobile phone really, with a SIM card attached that the laptops then can hotspot from. So, however, as a local authority, all our buildings have free Wi-Fi, as you would expect, but also at town centres too. And we're certainly, as local authorities, working closely with Welsh Government to see how we can extend those free Wi-Fi services so they are available in towns for people to access, if they need to. So that those kind of initiatives are up and running. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And Dave?
Yeah, I think as Hamish said, that there's probably a real merit in looking at social prescribing for broadband, but I think what often gets overlooked when we talk about access is the number of people these days who are actually accessing through mobile. And actually mobile access is on the increase. The percentage of mobile first users is increasing every year. And I think as well as giving people access to free public Wi-Fi, which is important, and kind of expanding the reach of that, I think something that's often overlooked, particularly for public and third sector services that are delivered online, is exploring how can we get those services and work with the providers, particularly the mobile providers, to start looking at zero rating those services. So there was a lot of work done in the last 12 months to zero rate a lot of services nationally with the UK government, but I think there's probably something that how can we start looking at zero rating those services at a local level as well, and what are those domains that need to be zero rated so that people can access them on mobile phone and not use up the data allowance, because the data allowance for a lot of people on mobile phone, particularly when we talk about poverty, is a huge issue.
I'm going to come to one of, I was just going to come to Nick. I think we've lost him again, unfortunately. I think he's having difficulties. Did anyone else want to come in on that point before I move on to the next question? Derek.
Yes, just very quickly, Jennifer. It's a bit of a non-answer, but I did know some of the housing associations had been looking at free Wi-Fi into homes in areas where they had tenancies in homes, but I don't know if they have been successful in doing that. But maybe one of my colleagues can add that to the chat if they're aware of that.
Nick, I don't know if you can hear us. Are you back in the room? Hi, we're just talking about whether we can provide, free public Wi-Fi, and there's a specific question that's come up in the column, and it's specifically for you. £15 per month sounds good to those of us who can afford full cost. Research from Rhondda tells us that participation will only start at prices of £1.50 to £5 per month. How can we do this? Oh, I'm afraid we can't hear you again, Nick. I'm afraid we still can't hear you, Nick. I think you might be switching your camera off and not your microphone.
No.
Still not hearing you, Nick. Okay. Still not hearing you, Nick, I'm afraid.
Jen, it looks like you have a problem here. I think you have to move.
Fine, no problem. Okay. Right. So the next top question, how do we get all public services to commit to allocating a budget to improving the basic digital skills of their service users? So allocating public services to commit to allocating a budget to improving the basic digital skills of their users. Derek, did you want to come in on this?
Yes, this is probably one that better aimed at those working in the public sector. One of the priorities of the work of DCWs is to work with public sector workers and to support them with the skills to be able to help their service users. So a lot of that work is ongoing. I guess from the outside, it's the age-old thing, isn't it? You know, if you're serious about things, it can't just be in the strategy document. You've got to make that happen. You've got to see things happen on the ground, and you've got to allocate resources to it. And I guess through the budgeting processes that public bodies go through, they need to think how they're going to be deliver on these strategic plans and allocate the resources that are necessary.
The next question from Sharon Wag. We often talk about digital skills for end users. What about the digital skills of frontline workers in public services, libraries, DWP, etc.? How are they being upskilled? Derek, once again, sorry to come to you again. You talked earlier about adding skills to staff. How is the Wales Co-operative Centre working on that?
So, yes, our team are able to train public sector workers about how they would work with their service users. So because often, we might not be experts ourselves as public sector workers, and our digital skills might not be as strong as we would like them. So this is about giving them the confidence and also the tools to be able to help the people that they want to work with. So we might be showing them online tools or particular websites or, guidance documents so that people then have the confidence to be able to offer anyone else the skills. I know just from helping my mum and dad with their digital skills that I'm not very skilled at doing this, and you need a bit of support sometimes in helping others, and that's what our team will do if contacted for help.
And Hamish?
This is a great question, and it is very easy to assume that the digitally excluded are all the service users and not the staff, and we know that isn't the case. We know, the health service is a massive employer, and we know that amongst its workforce there are many people drawn from the same communities that we're dealing with here, who are not digitally confident. And in fact, there was a survey from, I think, the Royal College of Nurses that said 20% of nurses said that they didn't have the digital skills to use the technologies they were expected to use in their workplace. So that's not just a nice thing. That's a clinical risk. You're asking people to use stuff to care for patients, and they don't know how to do it. So it's really important that employers see this as a bit in the public sector, that this is about their staff, not just the people who they serve. And that the workforce directors and directors of workforce or HR, have that on their radar and are working to have programs in their organizations. And as Derek says, the health service, they're not going to be experts in it, but they can work with people who are experts in it. The Digital Inclusion Alliance for Wales is planning a survey, in fact, of employers, and we'd be keen to hear from anyone who wants to help us with that, to understand the digital skills in their work, in their staff, which may be a bit of an eye-opener for them too, I think. And that's a good start, is measure the problem, and then you can start to fix it.
Indeed. Kath, you wanted to come in on that?
Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, please. I mentioned that we actually have a digital champions network within our authority, so who are all trained, and actually there's a digital champion in each team, so they're able to assist their own members of their team, but also as they go out into the community to assist the community to get online. And also mentioned in terms of our digital inclusion group, which is sort of chaired and managed really through Garvo, they are able actually then to use our digital champions within the libraries, for example, to actually set up a network of digital buddies. So people who will come into the library, we can provide training and mentors to enable them then to teach other members of the community. But I do agree with Hamish, really. This is essential to build into the initial business case. It's essential that we're building it as local authorities into our cabinet reports and all these other things to ensure that we are moving forward as one, as a public sector, really. Thank you.
Did anyone else want to come in on that point? No, okay, we'll move on to the next question. So how do we get all public services to commit to allocating a budget to improving the basic digital skills of their service users? I think maybe we've had that question already, sorry. Okay, next week. A recent survey, this is a question by Helen Evans, a recent survey by FUW highlighted the gap between rural and urban areas. 50% of the respondents from a rural area felt that the internet access wasn't fast or reliable enough. Any progress in this area? Anybody in particular want to come in on this one? Kath again.
Sorry, yeah, we do actually have a digital inclusion action group that we actually work with Welsh Government, which is based around digital infrastructure. And as rural authorities, we all work collectively to look at ways that we're doing different sort of rolling out different initiatives. So it is with BT, for example, also with other sort of internet service providers, to ensure we're coming together as one to identify where the gaps are, to ensure that we're pushing that rollout, particularly into rural areas. As I mentioned earlier, Monmouthshire as a rural county is digitally deprived, so we work with other colleagues to look at how we can actually do that to the benefit of the whole of Wales. So we are doing that collectively. Thank you.
And Dave Floyd from Parago.
Yeah, I think it's massively important. I think Wales is very divided, given the geography and the topography of the country, where we've got fairly decent connectivity, probably in the north and the south, and everywhere in the middle has got quite poor connectivity. But I think a big thing then, I'll come back to, will drag me back into talking about mobile data again. A real problem with broadband and getting broadband into every home, while it's an excellent ambition, it's a challenge in a country with the geography of Wales to dig up all those roads and dig through those mountains and lay fibre optic cable. But actually with 5G, there's a real opportunity to give people that kind of speed and those download speeds and that connectivity speed in rural areas. But I think the the focus on 5G needs to be away from the city centres across the north and the south, and actually we need to start thinking about the margins and rolling out 5G first and foremost into those rural areas where there's poor connectivity, so that we can close that digital divide where there's connectivity issues and start to build that capability in rural areas.
Unfortunately, we've lost Nick from BT. It would be nice to bring him in on this, but Derek Walker, I'll bring you in next.
Yes, I just wanted to flag a fund that the Welsh Government has called the Local Broadband Fund, which is exactly intended to support local authorities, community groups, social enterprises to work together to improve broadband access to rural areas. It's still open. Well, it opens every 6 months for applications, and the last round deadline was in January. So the next one will be, I guess, July. And they're always looking for good, strong applications. So, we at the centre will be very keen to work with organisations to help them get their bids in, because they're always looking for good, strong applications. So I'll try and post a link to that in the chat.
Fabulous, thank you, Derek. And Hamish wanted to come in.
I guess just to, and Nick's not here to make this point, so I'll make it for him, is that a lot of broadband strategy is set at UK level, not Welsh Government level, which is, I think, part of the challenge. And the scheme that Derek's talked about, and Superfast Broadband Cymru, are the Welsh Government, if you like, trying to fill in some of the gaps from the UK approach. But I do think there is something we can learn from other countries. It's very interesting in Spain, for example, where O2 Telefonica, which is their BT, if you like, they have a business model that favours fibre. So if anyone reports a problem with their copper connection, they just replace it with fibre. They don't ask them for £10,000 to dig a trench. And I was speaking to them recently. They say they're closing an analogue telephone exchange every day because they're cheaper and more effective to run digital exchanges. It's better for them. And they run the fibre over telegraph poles, like we run telephone lines in the country in rural Wales. So I do slightly struggle a bit to understand, if it works for them, why we can't have a similar business model in the UK, and particularly in Wales, with some of the same challenges. But nonetheless, these schemes are really important, and making sure people take them up is good.
And Kath?
Thanks, Jennifer. Yes, sorry. It was just really to add in terms of the local broadband fund. As local authorities, we are bidding into that. We have 2 live projects, one in the Lantoni Valley, which is quite remote, and also we're putting in another infrastructure which will enable it to be 5G capable. Picking up Dave's point, we're also part of a 5G rural communities sort of 5G Wales Unlocked programme, which looks at sort of various different use cases around rural economy, education, tourism, and also sort of transport, and how we looked at work together to actually get 5G into our remote areas. So there are plenty of projects going on. I think it just takes a little bit of time for them to gain traction, have that impact in people's homes, but we are working hard to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We'll move on to the next question. And Marco Gil Cervantes is looking for tips. The cornerstone is putting users first to ensure bureaucracy doesn't get in the way. Any tips on that? Dave Floyd at Parago, you're experts at putting users first. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we're working with several local authorities at the moment on sort of embedding that user first approach to service delivery, and I think the key to that, it's not a secret sauce, it's not magic. It's about getting that executive level buy-in, and kind of building it from the top. So it's from the chief executive down through the executive suite, and getting them to understand the benefits of taking that user-led approach to service delivery. And actually, we've done a lot. There's lots of reports, and we've got reports and strategies and everything else. But the real way to get that approach embedded is to get out and do stuff. And that's not scientific, I know, but actually just go out, start doing things, start engaging with users, start understanding what problems users have got. I think that there's just something. It's the think big, start small, and move fast and learn. And I think that's absolutely key, and building that confidence with senior members of the organisation that we can go out, we can engage users, we can take on board their concerns, we can deliver services that work for users that they can access and will access. And the more we do that, the more we build that confidence that it is the right approach. And the more, as we move forward, we start to build those business cases around taking a user-centred approach to delivery.
Helena, I was wondering, do older people feel listened to when they discuss their difficulties with getting online and upskilling themselves? What are the issues there?
Yeah, I was really interested in Dave's points there, and I think not always is the answer in terms of do older people feel listened to, not always. And there's something here about building trust as well. So I think what you can't do is, you know, if you're the leader of any organisation, is say, right, well, I'm going to engage with users, I've got a 45-minute slot in my diary this week, so I'll go off and do that, and there we are. So it has to be ongoing. You have to and you have to establish trust. So particularly if we're thinking about some of the groups that are really digitally excluded, so thinking, for example, older people from Black, Asian, minority ethnic groups who are particularly digitally excluded, and also may not trust public services, may have good reasons for that, may not trust public services so much. So thinking about ways to be with them. So not always expecting, as public bodies, people to come to you, but to think about how you go and meet people where they're at and have the conversation in the language that they're having the conversation, because we know there's a lot of language around digital that it does exclude if you're not used to it. So language important, taking time and building trust. And then the other one I would add is learning from what people do. So we've seen a lot of creativity over the last year or so. What are those little pockets of things, some of which have been talked about today, that people have just gone and done organically? They haven't waited for permission or a strategy. They've gone and done it. They've established ways of working, of connecting. And some of those have been incredibly powerful. So just to give you one example, if I may, the group Dementia Active in Gwynedd, who went online during the pandemic, provided support to people living with dementia and their carers to be able to connect online and do keep fit. And they produced a fantastic film called Get Connected, really about their experiences during the pandemic, but set to music and dance. Now, those sorts of things, I think, are some of the most powerful ways of demonstrating that you are listening and engaging, because you're really letting people take part, letting people demonstrate what they can do. And also you can learn from the way in which that was done as well. So I think we need to be better generally at listening, not just listening, but acting on what people are doing, and putting real time into that. Because if we're serious about it, you have to invest the time, and you have to continue to do that. And we have to, I think public bodies have to be a bit humble about that as well. They haven't got all the answers. Quite often the answers are amongst people who are grappling with this stuff every day.
Okay, thank you, Helena. One next question, Karen Lewis is asking, how do we address the issue of ongoing support for people? We've talked about digital skills. How about the ongoing support? Who would like to come on this? Derek.
Sorry, Helena, you were just about to start speaking. You go.
No, you go ahead. I was jumping in because no one else had, but you go ahead, Derek, please.
Well, one of the things that we think is needed is the sort of, and I haven't talked much about it, is the ongoing role of volunteers and people, you know, working in public services as sort of companions, digital companions. We support and train people to be digital companions of those who are perhaps new to being online, and to support them on their digital journey. And that can be very fulfilling work or volunteering for people that want to do that. And so I think that is one of the ways in which we can embed an approach where there are people who are skilled to be able to support others, that's not necessarily organised by the public sector, not necessarily delivered through DCW, but puts in place an infrastructure of companions that can support others to be online on an ongoing basis.
Helena.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, I think that there's other benefits from that as well, because particularly, you know, some of these digital companions are younger people helping older people, so you get great intergenerational links there, which is really positive, both for younger and older people. But also you can help older people support other older people, so you're really empowering people once they've got digitally confident to help others. And I think that notion of one-to-one help is really important. I was talking to an older person about digital stuff 2 or 3 days ago, and he said, oh, what I really need is a digital butler, which I thought was a great idea. I haven't quite come across that as an idea yet, but the notion of a digital butler, but you know, this sense of someone who's really there to support in a kind of, I guess, in a bit of a light-hearted way as well. So take some of the fear out of it, help people not feel stupid because it takes a bit of time to learn and be on that journey with them. I think those sorts of things are really important.
There's a question directed to Sarah. It's from Lorna. Can you talk more about the ways we could conduct research or speak with users that have been excluded? This is an important skill. And do you have any stories or tips to share on that?
Thanks, Lorna, for the question. We've actually got a piece of work currently that's live, and we're working with Promo Cymru to help us better understand what exactly those issues and challenges are amongst that group who feel excluded from accessing you know, those services. And I'll pop a link into the chat. Well, in terms of stories of tips to share, I think you know, from our own point of view, as an infrastructure body, we deliver services, and it's been very much a focus on delivering services online during the pandemic, because we can't simply go and talk to people face to face. So when we're thinking about, you know, introducing a new service or adapting or upgrading a service that we have, it's very much for us to understand what those people needs and wants are, how they access it. And, you know, I know this session today is about, you know, digital inclusion, but for the most part, people just still want to see a person. They still want to have that physical connection and that contact. And I think what we need to consider as well is how we best support those people and reintroduce them back into that sort of space where they can do that with confidence. And, you know, recognize that not everyone will want to access those services digitally. So I think from our point of view, and particularly locally through our partners in the county voluntary councils, speaking to colleagues there, they're just itching to try and get back into those communities and talk to those people again. I think because that's where the richness and the diversity and the intelligence comes about what we should be doing as a sector to support those individuals.
Okay, Sarah, thank you. And Hamish.
I was just going to add that there may be some very useful learning from our colleagues in the Office for National Statistics, because as part of the moving of the census online, they did have 10 years of notice of that, and they spent quite a lot of time trying to work out how they engage with hard to reach communities and the digitally excluded, given that it was the first digital census. So I hope very much they'll share their learning from that, but if not, we should be going to ask them for it, I think.
Excellent. We've got a question from William Sullivan. Is there a handy database of universities' IT departments in order to be put on a list for cast-off tech? It might be a cheap way of getting infrastructure into excluded people's homes. Does anyone on the panel, Hamish, do you know of anything on this along these lines?
Just two observations, and if you think universities have got a lot of tech, you should look at the health service. I guess just a warning, which is I'm not sure we want to be putting both universities, I speak as a university person these days, the university and the health service tend to only replace equipment when it's pretty clapped out. a constant frustration of those of us who work in those sectors. So putting a whole lot of clapped out technology into people's houses may not help them get the confidence and skills, because they may find it not working very well. And the second challenge is that actually the recycling of technology these days is often part of the business model, because they're often people who will buy them off the university and the health service to recycle the parts and to disaggregate the equipment. And the third is the challenge around the need to make sure there's nothing on them that's confidential. So it seems like a great idea, but there are some challenges. However, and there are definitely companies who do take this equipment from universities and the health service, and I'm sure local authorities too. Getting a list of the university IT departments in Wales wouldn't be at all difficult. There aren't that many. So I'm sure we could do that, but whether that's the answer, I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. It's been a fascinating morning. I'd really like to thank our panel on behalf of all our delegates: Hamish, Kath Ballon, Dave Floyd, Derek Walker, Helena Herklotz, Sarah Selig, and Nick Speed, who I'm very sorry we seem to have lost somewhere in the ether, but at least we did get a few points from him before we lost contact. If you haven't booked a place on this afternoon session, then it isn't too late for you to do so. The Let's Get Serious About Accessibility discussion starts at 1 o'clock. At 3, we'll be talking about meeting the needs of people with disabilities in the digital age. And of course, you can see the schedule for the whole of our Digital Leaders Week on the Wales Co-operative Centre website. I know we started today talking about the strategic approach to digital inclusivity. The rest of the week is all about the people that make it happen and the communities that they serve. So over the next few days, we'll be celebrating best practice and hearing from organisations that are already making a huge difference here in Wales. So tomorrow we'll be focusing on communities and Digital Communities Wales. We'll be talking about how we can help people re-engage with their communities post-COVID. Wednesday is all about trading online. On Thursday, we'll be dedicating the day to tackling diversity and inclusion in the digital age, something which we've touched upon this morning. And then the final day, Friday, is Digi Skills for Good Day. It's a live demonstration, and it's an all-day drop-in, they're 15-minute drop-in workshops. So do try to make time in your day to fit in one of those sessions, because they're designed to help you increase your organisation's impact, and hopefully they could be very useful for you. I mentioned at the beginning of the event the Menti poll, the feedback tool that we're using. There's a link in the chat which should appear magically as I'm talking about it now, so you can fill in the Menti poll at the end of the event. Give us some feedback, give us your thoughts and your main takeaways from today's event. So that's it from us. If you'd like to stay behind and chat, you can do so in the virtual meeting rooms or tables. So the event will be open until 12 o'clock. You've got another 23 minutes or so to chat and continue networking. But for now, from all of us, from the panel, from the Wales Co-operative Centre, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you've enjoyed your morning. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi am mwynhewch gweddill y diwrnod. Hwyl fawr.